Hey, hello guys. Good morning everyone. This is Priya from Alpha Group of Institutions. And today we are going to discuss the second part of chapter 3, the ruling the countryside. So in the last session we have completed part 1 and this is part 2. And before entering into part 2, let us recap what all we have learnt in part 1. Okay. Let us just see the headings. In part 1, we had discussed about the first English ship sailed towards India on 18th century and its purpose. Then the grant of Diwani and financial powers. Next, the growth of revenue, growth of problems of common people, everything we had discussed, right? And then Robert Clive, the picture we have seen, right? Robert Clive accepting the Diwani of Bengal. And later, Robert Clive, permanent settlement, and then the problems of permanent settlement, sales room of India East India House drawn by Thomas Rawlinson and Augustus Charles Pugin in the year 1809. Then Mahalwari settlement, the Munro system, and Thomas Munro government of Madras, how he had introduced the three types of systems to collect the revenue from the people. Then the problems of excessive revenue demand and what it leaded the people to end up. Later, the crops of Europe. With this, we had finished the last session, right? And directly going into the, because the second part also contains about the plants like crops of Europe. So before that, let us give a short description about the crops of Europe, children. Okay. And by the late 18th century, the company here means what? The East India Company tried to expand the cultivation of opium and indigo. The company forced cultivators in various parts of India to produce other crops: jute in Bengal, tea in Assam, sugarcane in the United Provinces like Uttar Pradesh, wheat in Punjab, and also cotton in Maharashtra and Punjab, rice in Madras, that is Chennai. And do you think does color have a history, guys? Yes, the rich blue color was produced from a plant called indigo. And the blue dye used in the Morris plant in 19th century Britain was manufactured from indigo plants cultivated in India. India was the biggest supplier of indigo in the world at the time. And why they are having the demand of indigo in India and why it is demand for Indian indigo? Because Indian plants grow in the tropics and Indian indigo was used by cloth manufacturers in Italy. So, in this chapter, let us discuss clearly about the Indian indigo, the process, the cultivation, export and import, everything we will be discussing today. Okay, children. Now let us discuss why indigo has a high demand. Okay, the tropical climate is good for indigo plantation. By the 13th century, Indian indigo was being used in Italy, France, and Britain. But the price of indigo was very high, and hence a small amount of Indian indigo could reach the European market. Wood is another plant which is used for making violet and blue dyes. Wood is a plant of temperature zones and hence was easily available in Europe. And wood was grown in northern Italy, southern France, and in parts of Germany and Britain. The wood products producers in Europe were worried by the competition from indigo and hence pressurized their governments to ban the import of indigo. But indigo was preferred by the cloth dyers. While indigo produced a rich blue color, and wood produced pale and dull blue. By the 17th century, European cloth producers pressurized their governments to relax the ban on indigo import. Indigo cultivation was started by the French in Saint Dominique in the Caribbean islands. Similarly, the Portuguese began indigo cultivation in Brazil. The Portuguese began indigo cultivation in where? Brazil. The British in Jamaica and the Spanish in Venezuela. Indigo plantations were also started in many parts of North America. By the end of the 18th century, industrialization began in Britain and cotton production expanded manifold. This created an enormous demand for cloth dyes. The existing supplies of indigo from the West Indies and America collapsed due to various reasons. The indigo production in the world fell by half between 1783 and 1789. This meant that there was increasing demand for Indian indigo. So, this is the picture that represents the British indigo factory in India. British indigo factory in India. So, why indigo is very that much important for them? So, basically, indigo is a plant from which a blue powder is derived, and this is used to dye clothes in blue, or as we say, indigo color. And indigo was so important because it can only be grown in tropical climate. So climate of India was suitable for its growth. India was the main exporter of indigo, and it was of high demand in Europe because it gave a rich blue color to be used for dyeing the clothes. In Europe, a plant named wood was cultivated which was used for dyeing clothes, but the color that it gave was not so rich like indigo. It results into the high demand of indigo in Europe. And one interesting fact about wood and indigo is that the wood cultivators were so worried about the tough competition they were facing because of indigo. Why? Because indigo is too darker and brighter than wood, and they pressurized their respective governments to ban the import of indigo because then only they can cultivate the wood rather than just waiting for indigo to get from India. And not only English but the French in Caribbean island, the Portuguese in Brazil, the Spanish in Venezuela also started cultivating indigo plants. While the demand for indigo was increasing, its supply fell to half between 1783 and 1789 due to various reasons. There was a less supply. The British dyers became keener to produce indigo, and at this point, they turned to India to meet their needs. And Britain also turns to India. The demand for indigo was rising day by day in Europe. Therefore, the company decided to expand indigo cultivation in India. Bengal was the largest exporter of indigo into the Britain. And in 1810, about 95% of the indigo imported by Britain was from Bengal only. As the indigo trade grew, many of the commercial agents and company officials started investing in the indigo business. And as this was a profitable business, many Englishmen settled in India and became indigo cultivators. They started cultivating Indian indigo, and they started becoming an indigo planters. Even loans were also granted by this British company and the banks from indigo cultivation. This is the demand which was faced in those years because of this indigo, and this is why our India was recognized with this indigo plant, and many of the foreign countries started falling on us for this indigo plant only for this indigo color. Okay, children. Next slide is about a major source of indigo in India. So why it is Indigo is playing a major source in India? The company looked for ways to expand the area under indigo cultivation in India. From the last decades of the 18th century, indigo cultivation in Bengal rapidly expanded. Only about 30% of indigo imported to Britain in 1788 was from India. This figure went up to 95% by 1810, and commercial agents and officials of the company began investing in indigo production to increase their profit. Many company officials Many company officials even left their jobs to look after their indigo business. Many people from Scotland and England came to India and became planters to grab the opportunity. The company and banks were given loans for indigo cultivation at that time. Morris cotton print, late 19th century England. This is a cotton print. Morris cotton. It's called a Morris cotton print. And then this is kalamkari print, 20th century India. And I think even now also you can see the kalamkari bed sheets, saris, chudis, many things are there. Kalamkari print is always little costlier than other things. So kalamkari print is still very famous. And for your concern, children, the rise and fall of the indigo industry in India is like in the year 1895 to 96, which was a record year. The export of indigo dye from India was 9,366 tons, valued at some some lakhs and crores. And indigo was then one of the principal articles in export trade of our eastern dominions. And in 1910 to 11, the export trade has sunk to about 846 tons. And apart from the interest attaching to the rise and fall of this once great industry, and the history of indigo cultivation in India possesses a peculiar interest for all Europeans of British nationality and who are interested in Indian trade or the problems of Indian administration. And the modern industry, like modern indigo industry, was created by the East India Company, and it was fostered and developed by the company's servants and attained the zenith of its prosperity under the management and care of British capitalists, planters, and traders. Many of the planters attained to great wealth, owned large estates, and settled down to live the lives of country gentlemen in the tropics. The road of hounds kept raising studs, revelled in pig-sticking, and entertained their friends on a princely scale. They were splendid riders and formed the smartest volunteer corps in Upper India. Since the date, the indigo industry of India has rapidly declined, and the export trade has shrunk to such small dimensions, and that its complete extinction seems likely. It is not inevitable. With its extinction, the British planters must find new fields for their energies or develop new industries on its ruins. Some of them have already begun to do so. Others have left the country or drifted into the towns and the Mufuzil or country districts of Bengal and Bihar are the poorer oozing. Okay, children. Now let us look the systems of indigo cultivation. So let us check here, like let us look into how indigo was cultivated. The first one is ninja cultivation. Children, indigo was cultivated under two systems. Okay, niche cultivation, and the second one is Ryoti. Niche. In this system, the planter produced indigo on those lands which were under his direct control. The planter either bought the land or rented it from other zamindars. He directly employed laborers to produce indigo. And the problem with niche cultivation, indigo could only be cultivated on fertile lands, but these areas were densely populated and hence only small plots could be acquired. This made it difficult to expand the area under niche cultivation. They attempted to release it in the land around the indigo factory. While doing so, they evicted the peasants from the area. Peasants' eviction always created conflict and tension. A large plantation required a large number of workers. Work at indigo plantation coincide A large plantation required a large number of workers. Work at indigo plantation coincided with a time when peasants were busy with rice cultivation. Hence, mobilizing the labor for indigo cultivation was a difficult task. These are the problems with niche cultivation. So, here niche means in this system the planter produced indigo on the land which was under his control. Either he was the owner or he had rented it for indigo cultivation, but the NIJ cultivators found it difficult to grow indigo because it required a large fertile area which was not easily available as most of the land was densely populated and there was no space to cultivate these indigo plants. And sometimes, as they were busy with the rice cultivation, thus they were not interested in growing indigo anymore because this is grabbing more attention. The cultivation of rice is grabbing more attention because it is a need for the survival. So many of the people started focusing on the cultivation of the rice when compared to the maize. Okay, sorry, when compared to the indigo. And we had seen the problems with maize cultivation. And this is the second type of system. What system? Like how indigo was cultivated. This is a cultivable. This is another system to cultivate the indigo. Ryoti system. Under the Ryoti system, indigo cultivation was done by the ryots. The planters made the ryots to sign a contract or an agreement. Sometimes they pressurized the village headman to sign the contract on the behalf of the ryots. After signing the contract, the ryots got cash advances from the planters. But after taking the loan, the ryots were committed to grow indigo and at least 25% of his land holding. Seeds and drills were provided by the planter. The cultivators prepared the soil, sowed the seed, and looked after the crop. But the planters bought indigo at low prices, and hence the ryots were always in the debt trap. And this is a picture of Leadenhall Street, London, 1837. You can see these imported things, right? Transporting things. And children, when we come to Ryoti system, under the Ryoti system, the planters entered into the contract with ryots or village headmen, and sometimes force them. And according to the contract, 25% of land was exclusively kept for the cultivation of indigo, and loans were provided for its cultivation. The planter used to provide like the seeds and drill to the farmer, and he in return had to take care of the plant. uh, like he has to be overall responsibility for the plants. But soon the riots realized that this system was not an easy one because they got trapped in the cycle of loans which were unending, and the income they received through indigo plantation was also very becoming very less day by day. Even the fertility of the land deteriorated, and the land became unfit for the growth of rice after the cultivation of indigo. So once the indigo has been cultivated in that land, after that they cannot cultivate rice in that land. And as the system of indigo plantation was very oppressive, all the peasants became rebellious. These are the two types of cultivative process. The one is niche process and the niche cultivation, and the second one is Ryoti system. And we have seen the problems what they are facing also. And the next thing is blue rebellion. Now coming to the blue rebellion. Thousands of riots in Bengal refused to grow indigo in March 1859. The riots refused to pay rents to the planters. They attacked indigo factories, and they used to be armed with swords and spears, bows and arrows. Women also fought with pots, panda, and kitchen implements. Those who worked for the planters were socially boycotted, and the gomastas were beaten up when they came to collect rent. The gomastas were the agents of indigo planters. In many villages, headmen mobilized the indigo peasants against the Lathials. The headmen were angry because they had been forced to sign indigo contract. Some zamindars were angry with the increasing power of the planters and at being forced to give them land or long leases. So some zamindars also supported the villagers in their revolt against the indigo planters. After the revolt of 1857, the British government was worried about the possibility of another population rebellion. When the news of Indigo revolt spread, the Governor toured the region in the winter of 1859. This was seen as a sign of sympathy by the riots. They began to believe that the British government would support them in their struggle. When the rebellion spread, intellectuals from Calcutta rushed to the Indigo districts. They began writing about the misery of the riots and the horrors of the Indigo system. The government called in the military to protect the planters. The Indigo Commission was set up to inquire into the system of indigo production. The commission held the planters guilty. It asked the riots to fulfill their existing obligations, and then they were free to cultivate whatever they wished. And this is a picture you can see, children, are people being as a labor in the indigo factories. These are the factories where the plants were cultivated and brought here to make the blue powder. And see the way how they are treating them and where they used to get a very low cost for labor for their work. And after the revolt, the indigo production collapsed in Bengal. After the revolt, the planters now shifted their operation to Bihar. Discovery of synthetic dyes in the late 19th century severely affected the business, but the planters managed to expand production. When Mahatma Gandhi returned from South Africa, the plight of indigo farmers in Champaran was brought to his notice, and Mahatma Gandhi visited Champaran in 1917 and began the movement against the indigo planters. And this is the indigo plant. You can see, children, these are the indigo plants, and these rich flowers gives that royal blue color. And because of those powder, blue powder, only blue color, which were used to dye the clothes, created such an impact on India. And then, uh, like, uh, so here when we discuss about the blue rebellion and after the revolt, in March 1859, a rebellion broke in Bengal. Many of the riots refused to pay rents to the planters. Not only this, they attacked indigo factories. At some places, the village headmen who were forced to enter into a contract by the planters also supported this rebellion. And peasants at some places thought that they would get support from the Britishers, but it was not so, as the Britishers became cautious after the revolt of 1857. So, they brought military for the safeguarding planters in the Indigo districts. Queen Victoria ordered magistrate of Barasat Ashley Eden to issue a notice stating that riots would not be forced to enter into the Indigo contracts. An Indigo commission was set up to look into the matter. The commission came up with the following conclusions, like planters were found guilty, planters were coerced, like forcing riots to enter into the contract. Indigo cultivation was not profitable for riots. The riots were asked to fulfill the existing contracts, but they got the right to refuse for indigo cultivation in future. And after the revolt, a production of indigo came to an end in Bengal. Planters shifted to Bihar. There also they faced similar revolt known as Champaran Revolt in year 1917, which was like supported by Mahatma Gandhi, and he started taking care of all such things. And like when we want to talk about this, when the crop was delivered to the planter after the harvest, a new loans were given. The planters usually insisted that indigo would be cultivated on the best soils in which peasants preferred to cultivate rice. And indigo exhausted the soil rapidly, and the land could not be sown. All these are the really one side, if they have concentrated, it might have given us a very good result, but the greediness on the other hand, like it also played a role to demolish all such things. And indigo production collapsed in Bengal after this revolt. When Mahatma Gandhi returned from South Africa, a peasant from Bihar, he only persuaded him met him to visit Camparan and see the problems of the indigo cultivators. And the year, which year? It was 1917. He visited, which marked the beginning of the Camparan movement against the indigo planters. And that was our legend Mahatma Gandhi, who had started to fight back against these indigo cultivators, planters. Understood, children? So, with this, chapter 3, ruling the countryside, is completed. So, in this chapter 3, ruling the countryside, there are two parts. First part we have already finished. This is the second part. With this, the whole chapter is completed. And now it's your turn, like your turn to complete, because my turn has completed. I mean, I have completed my turn by teaching you, explaining you. On the other hand, like you have to return to me in the form of reading what all the classwork content I am giving you. So in the last session, the activity and homework was like I asked you to read and write the fill-ups match in the first question, right? You have to fill the textbook, write the classwork, and write a home test also, isn't it? And today's activity is from the second question, you have to read all the remaining questions. Fill-ups match and first question you have finished. From the second question, you have to finish all the questions. You have to complete the classwork, read it well, write a home test, get a signature from your parent, and post it in the group. And this is our habitual thing when since the e-learn session started, right, children? Hope you all will obey my instructions. And with this session and chapter 3 also completed, children. Thank you so much. I'll be always with you, and if you have any problems, you can clarify by calling the school number. Okay. Thank you, children. This is Priya signing off from Alpha Group of Institutions. Thank you, Ma.